Some men ride into legend, others vanish inside it. Elijah Carter thought he could chase down a ghost of grit and gunpowder, but ghosts don't play by the laws of man. Last we saw him, he was deep in the cursed canyons, storm rising, the shadows closing in, and something ancient riding fast from the dark. And now, well, let's just say this tale don't end with a noose or a gunfight. No, this one ends where the trail gives out and something else takes over. So, cinch that saddle one last time and mind the thunder, because tonight, the legend rides back. Welcome to the final chapter of The Legend of Colt Slade. The trail dipped, winding toward the river, the dry brush giving way to the remnants of an old wagon road, nearly erased by time. Elijah kept dust at a steady pace, his gaze flickering toward the sky, darkening now, but still clear, no clouds, no sign of rain. And yet, the wind carried the faint scent of damp earth, like the lane was preparing for something that wasn't there yet. The crossing came into view, a stretch of rocky shallows where the water barely moved, its surface disturbed only by the occasional gust of wind. Near it, just past the bend, lay the remains of a camp, old fire pits, forgotten supplies, empty saddles with no riders. Something about the place felt off. The camp was old, but not ancient, like someone had used it long enough to matter, then left too suddenly. Dust halted before Elijah even pulled the reins. It wasn't gestation, but pure refusal. The horse shifted, ears twitching, his muscles coiled tight. Elijah exhaled slowly, scanning the area. Then movement. Not ahead, behind. Or maybe not behind at all, maybe just there, shifting at the edge of his senses. Then came the sound, a hollow, distinct hoofbeat. Just one, just barely there, but wrong somehow. Elijah's breath tightened in his chest, not out of fear, or at least not yet. Then the wind changed again, not stronger, heavier, colder, and in the shallow water ahead, a shape formed in the dimming light. It was a shadow, not solid. It wasn't quite there, but it was watching. Elijah knew that much. Elijah let dust remain still beneath him, his grip firm on the reins, his breath slow and measured. The shadow in the water hadn't moved, not even forward or backward, not even a flicker. It was just there, watching and waiting. He flexed his fingers against the worn leather of his gloves. His pulse hadn't quickened. Elijah had stared down plenty of men before, killers, thieves, outlaws, who thought their guns made them gods. He was used to silence carrying tension, used to the feeling of something unresolved, settling deep into the air. However, this wasn't the same, but that didn't mean it wasn't nothing. He decided to test it.
You lost?
His voice was steady, cutting through the quiet. No hesitation, no weakness. The wind caught at his coat, like a warning he wasn't willing to acknowledge. The shadow didn't answer. It didn't even move. Didn't shift. It just existed. Elijah tightened his jaw, let the weight of the silence settle for another long second, then pushed his voice through the empty space again.
Ain't much left here worth riding for.
Still, nothing. But the air wasn't the same anymore. Something felt off, different, like the land was waiting for him to move first. Elijah exhaled slowly. So be it. Elijah shifted in the saddle, pressing dust forward, eyes locked on the shadow in the shallows. It was still there, watching, waiting, unmoving. The silence pressed tight against the canyon walls, He narrowed his gaze, breathed steady, forcing his nerves into submission. Then hoofs, not his own, not distant this time, close, too close. Elijah twisted sharply toward the sound, but another stretch of the river, just beyond the bend, nothing but rocks and the slow, unbroken trickle of water. He barely had time to register the emptiness of it before his instinct kicked in. Turned back toward the shadow. Gone. The water rippled where it had stood, but it was nowhere to be seen. Dust hoofed, shifting under him, uneasy now, muscles coiled tight. Elijah swallowed slow. The world around him hadn't changed. The river was still just a river. The canyon, still just stone and dust. And yet the air was different, lighter, not empty, like something had been there and had chosen to leave. Or worse, like it hadn't left at all. Elijah sat still in the saddle, dust shifting uneasy beneath him. The horse's breathing sharp in the cold, stretched air. The shadow was gone, but the silence wasn't. He decided to test it again.
You got something to say?
The words cut against the quiet, bold, steady, his voice filling the space like a challenge thrown into the darkness. But nothing answered the call. Not the wind or the earth, nor whatever had stood in the river seconds before. His gloved fingers flexed against the worn leather, talking to what seemed like nothing. Should have felt foolish. The stillness of the land suggested otherwise. He wasn't talking to nothing at all. Still, his instincts kicked back toward the hunt, towards something real. He turned his focus away from the river, pulling dust toward the remains of the abandoned camp, scanning the scattered gear, the remnants of old fires. There were signs of recent movement, boot tracks, shifting stones, the scattered remains of supplies that hadn't rotted completely. His bounty had been here. He was certain of that. But the camp was empty now. There was no sign of violence. No signs of a hurried departure, just the weight of absence, the kind that felt more intentional than accidental. The shadows lengthened, stretching across the canyon floor, the last of the dying light clinging to the highest peaks. Elijah stood at the edge of the abandoned camp, his gaze sweeping the empty space, his senses on high alert. Something about this place. It wasn't just the silence, it was the wrongness of it. The stillness felt unnatural, like the land itself was holding its breath, waiting. The sound followed. It wasn't the wind, nor the stirring of leaves. Instead, a deep, resonant groan arose, as if the very ground was in motion. Elijah spun around, his hand automatically reaching for his gun. The sound repeated, nearer now, reverberating through the canyon with an unnatural heaviness. It was a voice unlike anything human or animal. The words were blurred, rough, and deep, yet the meaning was clear, a threat. Get out. Elijah moved deeper into the abandoned camp, his senses sharp, the weight of the silence pressing down from all sides. Fire pits were circles of ashes and blackened stone, undisturbed for a long time. Scattered amongst them were the remnants of supplies, rusted tins, cracked leather, fragments of cloth, all bleached and torn by the elements. But it was the stain that caught his eye, not the faded brown of dried blood on the dusted coat from before. This was darker, fresher. On a flat stone near the largest fire pit, the stain was unmistakable, a pool of black, thick, congealed blood. And near it, half buried in the dirt, something glinted in the fading light. Metal. Elijah crouched, his hand tightening on the grip of his revolver. Silence. Nothing moved. The only sound was the slow, steady rhythm of his own breathing. He reached out, his fingers brushing against the cold metal. A knife. It wasn't a hunting knife. The blade was thick and heavy, the kind used for... He didn't finish the thought. The image hit him then, sudden and sharp. A memory. Pain. Terrifying. Agonizing. The world tilting sideways. The ground rushed up to meet him. Darkness. Elijah recoiled, his breath catching in his throat, his heart pounding against his ribs. The vision faded as quickly as it came, leaving him disoriented, shaken. He stared at the knife, his mind reeling. It wasn't possible. It couldn't have been real. But the feeling lingered, the echo of pain, the taste of terror. Whatever had happened here, it hadn't been peaceful. Beyond the campsite, Elijah stared into the darkness, his mind filled with unfamiliar images and noises. The wind picked up, swirling around him with the faint scent of rain. The sound came again. Hoofs. Closer now, louder. This time, not from the river, but from the canyon behind him. Elijah spun in the saddle, his grip tightening on the reins, his eyes searching the darkness. The pounding of hooves intensified, the ground vibrating. Dust whined, fear widening his eyes as he fought against the winds. Then he saw a rider. The rider materialized in the canyon shadows, moving with incredible speed. The figure was tall, broad, and powerful, yet headless. Elijah gasped. This was no illusion, no trick of the light, but something undeniably real. A rider and a massive black horse with glowing eyes approached in an unnatural, faint light that illuminated the dust and rocks. The rider carried no lantern, yet was surrounded by an eerie glow. They moved directly toward him. Elijah spurred Dust forward, charging directly toward the headless rider. He knew that whatever it was, ghost, demon, or just a hallucination, he would not back down. The rider didn't slow or even swerve. In fact, the rider didn't even acknowledge Elijah's approach. The black horse beneath him moved with unnatural speed, its hooves pounding the earth with a force that seemed to shake the very stones. The rider's form remained rigid, unyielding, his empty neck a void in the fading light. Elijah drew his revolver, the metal gleaming in the eerie glow that surrounded the operation.
Hold.
His voice cracked through the silence, a challenge and a warning. But the rider didn't respond. It just kept moving. Elijah fired. The shot echoed through the canyon, sound swallowed by the vastness of the approaching storm. The bullet passed through the rider as if it wasn't there at all. The headless rider bore down on Elijah, impossibly fast. He swung Dust to the side, narrowly avoiding the charge as the black horse and rider passed in a blur of shadow and glowing light. Elijah twisted in the saddle, firing again. The bullet passed through the rider again. He was intangible, untouchable. The rider wheeled his mount around, the black horse turning on a dime, his hooves tearing into the earth. He faced Elijah again, the empty space where his head should have been fixed on him with intensity that transcended sight. Then the rider raised an arm. They were not holding a weapon, but pointing toward the river. Elijah glanced that way, blood turning to ice. The shadows in the shallows were moving, not one, but many rising from the water, coalescing into the dark, indistinct forms. The rider hadn't been alone, it had been a trap. Shadow figures advanced from the shallows toward Elijah, Dust panicking, reared and struck at the air with its hooves, his eyes wide. Elijah struggled to calm his horse while watching both the encroaching shadows and the headless rider. There was nowhere to go. Inescapable canyon walls and glowing shadows left no way out. The rider suddenly turned her back. Ground trembled as the headless rider wheeled his ebony steed and galloped back into the canyon's dark depths. Simultaneously, the watery shadows receded into the shallows, vanishing as abruptly as their appearance. And then they were all gone, vanished, leaving behind only the echoes of hoofbeats and the unnatural stillness of the night. The storm had come with fury, tearing through the canyon, unraveling Dusthaven's quiet with the lightning, wind, and the pounding force of unseen hoofs. And then it was gone. Almost as fast as it had arrived, the storm retreated, the sky settling into uneasy silence, the land left damp, raw, as if the storm had stolen something when it passed. The town remained still, waiting, watching, yet no one said what they feared. Then, deep in the night, the air had calmed and the dust had settled. The sound of hoofs echoed through the empty streets. Slow, measured, alone. Dust emerged from the canyon, his breath heavy, his coat slick with rain, his movements tense. But his saddle was gone, and Elijah Carter was nowhere to be seen. Days passed. Elijah vanished. Despite a thorough search of the canyons, riverbanks, and old trails, the town found no sign of him. His only trace was his revolver, half buried in the dust, a stark reminder that he had indeed ridden into the storm. Colt Slade is rumored by some to have drawn him into the enduring legend. Others believe Elijah remains lost in time. Regardless, Dusthaven never spoke his name the same again. And when the storms gather over the sand-grayed Crystal Mountains, the locals still whisper the name of the lawman, dared to chase a ghost, and was never seen again.